In the heart of Chicago, where the winter wind cuts through the streets like a knife, there lived a woman named Sarah. She was 32 years old, but if you looked into her tired eyes, you might think she had lived 100 years. Her hands were rough from endless work, her shoulders carried the weight of the world, and her face rarely showed a smile anymore. But Sarah wasn't always like this. 5 years ago, she had been different. She had dreams. She had hope. She was married to a man she thought would be her partner for life. They had 2 beautiful children together, Emma, now 8 years old, and little Jake, who was 6. Sarah worked as a receptionist at a dental office, and life, though not perfect, felt manageable. Then, everything fell apart. Her husband left one day. He was there, and the next day he was gone. No explanation, no goodbye to the children, just a text message that said, "I can't do this anymore." Sarah later found out he had been seeing someone else, someone younger, someone without the responsibilities of children and bills and a life that had grown complicated. Sarah was devastated, but she didn't have time to fall apart completely. She had 2 small children depending on her. The apartment rent was due, the electricity bill was overdue, there was barely any food in the refrigerator. So Sarah did what she had to do. She worked. She worked as a waitress at a busy diner from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., rushing between tables, forcing smiles at customers even when her feet were screaming in pain. Then she would race home, pick up her children from the neighbor who watched them, help them with homework, make dinner from whatever she could afford, and put them to bed. But that wasn't enough to pay the bills. So at 10 p.m., after her children were asleep, Sarah drove to a gas station on the south side of the city and worked the night shift until 6 a.m. She would stand behind the bulletproof glass, selling cigarettes and lottery tickets to strangers, fighting to keep her eyes open, her body begging for rest. Then, on weekends, when other mothers were taking their children to the park or spending time together, Sarah cleaned houses. She scrubbed toilets, mopped floors, and dusted shelves in homes that were bigger than anything she could ever dream of owning. 3 jobs, 7 days a week, barely 4 hours of sleep each night. And still, it wasn't enough. The credit card bills were piling up. The landlord was threatening eviction. Her car, an old beat-up Honda that barely ran, was making a terrible grinding noise every time she started it. Sarah knew it was going to break down soon, and she had no money to fix it. One cold Tuesday morning in November, as Sarah was driving to the diner for her morning shift, the car made a loud clunking sound and simply stopped right there in the middle of traffic. Smoke poured from under the hood. Sarah sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, and for the first time in months, she broke down. Tears streamed down her face. She sobbed so hard her whole body shook. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered to herself. "I just can't." Cars honked behind her. Someone yelled at her to move, but Sarah couldn't move. She felt paralyzed by exhaustion, by hopelessness, by the crushing weight of everything. Eventually, a tow truck came and took her car to a mechanic. The diagnosis was devastating. $1,200 in repairs. Sarah didn't have $1,200. She didn't even have $200. She called her boss at the diner and told him she couldn't come in. She called the gas station and told them she couldn't make her shift. Then she walked home 3 miles in the freezing cold and collapsed on her couch. Her children came home from school that afternoon to find their mother sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. "Mommy, are you okay?" little Jake asked, his voice filled with worry. "I'm fine, baby. Mommy's just tired." But she wasn't fine. She was drowning. That evening, Mrs. Patterson knocked on the door. Mrs. Patterson was an elderly black woman in her 70s who had lived in the building for over 40 years. She had watched Sarah's struggle from afar,
seeing the young mother leave at all hours of the night, seeing the exhaustion etched on her face. "Sarah, honey," Mrs. Patterson said gently, "I brought you some soup. You look like you could use a warm meal." Sarah tried to refuse, but Mrs. Patterson was insistent. She came in, heated up the soup, and sat with Sarah at the small kitchen table. For a while, they sat in silence. Then Mrs. Patterson spoke. "I see you, child," Mrs. Patterson said softly. "I see how hard you're working. I see how much you're carrying." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how much longer I can do this, Mrs. Patterson. I'm so tired. Everything keeps going wrong. My car broke down. I can't afford to fix it. I'm going to lose my jobs, and then I won't be able to pay rent, and then we'll be homeless, and—" Mrs. Patterson reached across the table and took Sarah's hand. "Stop," she said firmly, but kindly. "Stop thinking about all the terrible things that might happen. You're drowning yourself in worry before anything has even happened." Sarah wiped her tears. "But what am I supposed to do? Everything is falling apart." Mrs. Patterson smiled, a knowing smile that came from years of her own struggles. "Let me tell you something, child. When I was your age, I was in a situation just like yours. My husband had died suddenly, leaving me with 3 children and a mountain of debt. I worked 2 jobs just like you. I was exhausted just like you today. And one day, I broke down just like you did today." Sarah looked up surprised. She had never known this about her neighbor. "What did you do?" Sarah asked quietly. "I learned something important," Mrs. Patterson said. "I learned that we can't control everything that happens to us. Cars break down, bills pile up, life throws us curveballs. But what we can control is how we respond. And more importantly, we can control what we're building towards." Sarah looked confused. "Building towards?" Mrs. Patterson nodded. "Right now, you're working 3 jobs just to survive. You're running on a treadmill, exhausted, going nowhere. But what if, instead of just surviving, you started building something for your future?" "I don't have time to build anything," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "I barely have time to breathe." "I know it feels that way," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "But let me ask you something. In 5 years, do you want to still be working 3 jobs, barely making it? Or do you want something different?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, "I want something different, but I don't know how." Mrs. Patterson squeezed her hand. "You're not just working to pay bills, Sarah. You're showing your children what strength looks like. You're showing them that when life knocks you down, you get back up. That's powerful. That's important. But you also need to show them that struggle doesn't have to be forever." Over the next hour, Mrs. Patterson and Sarah talked. Mrs. Patterson shared her own story, how she had gone back to school at age 35, taking night classes while working during the day, how she had become a nurse, how she had slowly, painfully pulled herself and her children out of poverty. "It took me 5 years," Mrs. Patterson said. 5 years of sacrifice, 5 years of being tired. But at the end of those 5 years, my life was completely different. Something shifted in Sarah that night. A tiny spark of hope flickered in her heart.
The next morning, Sarah made a decision. She couldn't fix a car right now. She couldn't change her situation overnight. But she could take one small step towards a different future. She went to the public library and used the computer to research online nursing programs. Nurses made good money, enough to support her family with just one job. It would take time, it would require sacrifice, but it was possible. Sarah enrolled in an online certified nursing assistant program. The classes were in the evenings, after her children went to bed. It meant even less sleep. It meant studying when she was exhausted. It meant sacrificing any free time she had. But for the first time in years, Sarah felt like she was moving towards something instead of just running in place. The first few months were brutal. Sarah borrowed money from Mrs. Patterson to fix her car temporarily. She cut every possible expense: no cable TV, the cheapest phone plan, meals made from rice and beans. Her children wore hand-me-down clothes. There were no birthday parties, no trips to the movies, no toys. Sarah felt guilty. She worried she was failing her children. One night, as she was tucking Emma into bed, her daughter looked up at her and said, "Mommy, why do you study so much?" Sarah's heart ached. "I'm trying to make things better for us, sweetheart. I'm learning to become a nurse so I can get a better job and we can have a better life." Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm proud of you, Mommy." Those words, those simple, beautiful words, gave Sarah the strength to keep going. Months turned into a year. Sarah passed her CNA certification. She got a job at a hospital, working as a nursing assistant. It didn't pay much more than her 3 jobs combined, but it was one job with benefits. She could drop the gas station and house cleaning. But Sarah didn't stop there. She kept studying. She enrolled in an LPN program, a licensed practical nurse certification. It would take 2 more years, but it would mean even better pay, better opportunities. There were so many times Sarah wanted to quit. There were nights she cried from exhaustion. There were moments she felt like she couldn't do it. But every time she wanted to give up, she thought about Mrs. Patterson's words. "The struggle you're in today is developing the strength you need for tomorrow." 2 years passed. Sarah passed her CNA certification. She worked during the day as a CNA, studied at night, and somehow found time to be present for her children. Emma joined the school choir. Jake made the soccer team. Sarah went to every performance, every game, even when she was dead tired. And then finally, Sarah passed her LPN exam. She got a job at a better hospital with much better pay. For the first time in 6 years, Sarah could pay all her bills without panic. She could buy her children new clothes. She could take them out for pizza on Fridays. But Sarah still wasn't finished. She had come too far to stop now. She enrolled in an RN program, registered nurse. It would take 3 more years of night school, but when she was done, she would have a career, not just a job. 3 years later, at age 38, Sarah walked across a stage in a cap and gown and received her Bachelor of Science in Nursing. Her children were in the audience, cheering louder than anyone else. Mrs. Patterson was there too, tears streaming down her face. Sarah got a job as a registered nurse in the pediatric unit of a major Chicago hospital. She made enough money to move her family into a nice apartment in a safe neighborhood. She bought a reliable car. She started a savings account. But more than that, Sarah had transformed. She was no longer the exhausted, hopeless woman who had broken down crying in her car. She was strong. She was confident. She had proven to herself that she could overcome anything. One evening, Sarah invited Mrs. Patterson over for dinner. As they sat together, Sarah took her elderly friend's hand. "I never thanked you properly," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "That night you came over with soup, you changed my life. You gave me hope when I had none." Mrs. Patterson smiled. "No, child, I didn't change your life. You did. I just reminded you of what was already inside you: strength, determination, and the courage to keep going, even when everything feels impossible." Sarah began volunteering at a women's shelter, sharing her story with other single mothers who were struggling. She wanted to be for them what Mrs. Patterson had been for her: a light in the darkness, a reminder that struggle doesn't last forever if you're willing to work towards something better. The lesson. Sarah's story teaches us something powerful.
We cannot always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond and what we build towards. When life knocked Sarah down, she had every reason to stay down. She had every excuse to give up. But she made a choice to see her struggle not as the end of her story, but as the beginning of her transformation. The struggle you're in today is not wasted. It's building your character. It's teaching you strength. It's preparing you for the life you're meant to live. But struggle alone isn't enough. You must also have vision. You must be willing to take small steps, even when you're exhausted, toward the future you want to create. Sarah worked 3 jobs for years, but she didn't stay stuck there. She used her struggle as fuel, not as an excuse. To every woman watching this who feels overwhelmed, exhausted, and hopeless, know this: your current situation is not your final destination. You are stronger than you know. You are capable of more than you can imagine, and the life you dream of is possible, but only if you refuse to give up. One day at a time, one step at a time, one small victory at a time. Keep going. Your breakthrough is coming.